everybody.
Good morning.
Today we are going to be talking about rest.
No rest for
I think we all know this phrase, saying no rest for the wicked. And I want us to be thinking about, as we go through this message, when was the last time that we felt at rest? Because here's the thing, God loves rest. He thinks that rest is so important that he actually commanded Israel to Sabbath rest. And let's go ahead and read about that in Exodus 20. This is one of the 10 commandments that's given from God through Moses to Israel. And it says in Exodus 20:8 to 11, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Imagine what it was like for the Israelites to receive this commandment from God. The Israelites were people that had just been delivered from slavery in Egypt. As slaves, they didn't know any rest. As slaves, they were only valued for their labor. They were only valued by what they were able to produce for the Egyptians. And I imagine they were tired. Even their delivery out of Egypt was on foot.
Yes.
These were tired people. And this God that rescued them commanded them to rest. Now, if we put ourselves in their shoes, I can just imagine what a gift this is. And I think we start to see Sabbath a little bit differently as a gift that God has given to his people. Imagine that after toiling for all your life, not only are you given the chance to rest, but actually the command to rest by the very God who saved you from that toil, from that labor and enslavement. I imagine that this would be such a relief to the people of Israel. And I also imagine that it would be a source of confusion and conflict, because did they even know how to rest? Did they know what rest meant? What would they do with the day of Sabbath once every 7 days? I think that they would begin during this time of Sabbath that God had given to them. They would be forced to begin wrestling with their identity apart from their enslavement and apart from their labor. I think that they would be forced to wrestle with who they are and who God is. I think that they would be given the opportunity to learn themselves anew and to learn God anew as they entered a new pace of life. And when I think about what it must have been like for the Israelites to receive this command from God to rest, it sounds a little bit familiar. So we're not people that are living the way that the Israelites had lived under enslavement in Egypt, but we are those that are living lives that are valued based on our ability to produce things.
Yes.
Right? We live in a context where we're driven to do more and more, to accomplish more and more, where we have to prove that we're valuable through the works that we can do and the things that we can give to society and to the world and to one another. Our lives are centered around the things that we do. Right? And so in this way, I find myself, I don't know what you all identifying with the Israelites. We live as people that are valued for our work. And I think we're tired. And we encounter this God that wants to interrupt this worldly rhythm of work, 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 and give us his own rhythm of work and rest. And so when we look at Exodus 20 and this command that God gave to his people of Israel, we start to see why rest is so important to him. In addition to just caring for his people and wanting to give them a rest when they had no rest, he says, for in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. So he commands his people to rest because he is a God that rests. And so we rest with his rhythm that he established from the beginning, right? This was at the beginning, just after creation, that God rested. And so even before the Israelites were enslaved and delivered, even before the fall, God was a God who rested. And so not only is this a gift to a newly freed people, but an invitation into life with himself, into his own rhythms, into an intimacy with the way that God does life, with the way that he is and exists with others, including his own, his own self as Father, Son, and Spirit. And so when God invites the Israelites to rest, he's inviting them to be like him. And when he invites us to rest, he's inviting us to be like him. He's inviting us into his divine rhythms, the same rhythms of rest and enjoyment that he enjoyed at the beginning of creation with all the wonderful things that he had just created. The rest that God as Father, Son, and Spirit took to enjoy the beautiful creation that they had just produced. He's inviting us into that rhythm, to live that life with him. He's drawing us deeper into his life and knowing him and walking with him. And this is something that was unique to God's way when he gave this commandment to Israel. So biblical historians, as far as they can tell, there was nothing like the Sabbath at that time and place with the societies around the Israelites. There was no intentional rhythm of work and rest that was at play. And so again, we're seeing that God is inviting the Israelites into something new, into something that's distinctly of him, and sharing his life with them. So he's inviting them into this journey to go deeper into relationship and kind of press deeper into their purpose and press deeper into this taste of what life with God is like. And I always I really hate phrases that are true but they're corny, because it's like, why can't you be true and not be corny? But this is one of these phrases. I think it's probably not the first time that we've heard these phrases, but we're human beings, not human doings, right? And this is one of those things that I think God was impressing upon the people of Israel when he gave them this command that we see in Exodus 20, that there's more to our purpose than what we can do and what we produce. There's this quote that I think is so profound that is found in a book called Sacred Rhythms that's written by Ruth Haley Barton. And it's a book about creating rhythms in our lives, rhythms of rest and work and intentional time with God. And she says in her book, there's a freedom that comes from being who we are in God and resting in God that eventually enables us to bring something truer to the world than all of our doing. And I think this is what God was giving the Israelites in his commandment to rest, to Sabbath rest. The opportunity to bring to the world something more true than all of their doing, because as slaves in Egypt, that's all that they were expected to give, was their doing. And God's saying there's more to that, and there's more purpose to that, and there's more to who you are than that. And I think he has the same message for us today in our own context that is so similar in the way that we're valued by the things that we do, and we're assessed by the things that we do in the world, not truly who we are and our greater purpose. And so seizing our daily routines for rest is this revolutionary act that God gives, and it frees us to acknowledge our more true identity in him, our more true value in him. And as I'm sure it did for the Israelites, it causes us to wrestle with who we are, apart from what we can produce, and apart from our job evaluations, and apart from the deadlines we've met, and apart from the new programs that we've produced, all of that, apart from what the world values of us. When we come to rest in God, we're invited to the struggle of what's left apart from this. And he shows us that there's a whole lot more. Because in wrestling with that, we begin to find the truth, the profound truth of our identity in him, of our value in him, of the whole and holistic humanity that he's called us to be. We find that he's inviting us into his own rhythms. And as we align ourselves with God's divine rhythms and his ways, it's more than just, okay, we kept the Sabbath, or okay, we rested, check, right? Now I can be a holier person, follower. It's an act of trust and surrender when we interrupt our earthly rhythms to let his kingdom rhythms enter into our lives. It's an act of trust and surrender to say that we say yes to your way, God, and your way of being over our way of being that we're offered in this world. As a kind of silly illustration, I want us to think about, do we all know the fast food restaurant Chick-fil-A? We don't have many up in this area, sadly. But Chick-fil-A is a fast food restaurant that serves chicken. That's why they're called Chick-fil-A. And they're a Christian company. And one of the things that they're kind of notoriously known for that people get enraged about, including myself, is that they're closed on Sundays. And as a Christian, I feel justified in being enraged that they're closed on Sundays, but that's a different matter. Chick-fil-A is a business because they are a Christian business. They choose to close on Sundays, for their employees to get the opportunity to enjoy in God's rhythm of work and rest, for their business to enjoy in God's rhythms of work and rest. And on the surface, from a worldly perspective, we would think that's so dumb, right? Sunday is when people want Chick-fil-A, right? Like you're coming home from church, you want to get you some good Chick-fil-A. But what the numbers tell us is that in total income, Chick-fil-A ranks, I think it's 8th of the fast food chains in the United States, but they have way, way fewer locations than all of the companies that rank higher than them in the fast food chain industry. And so if we're talking about a per store income, one Chick-fil-A store on average brings in more than McDonald's, Starbucks, and Subway combined in a single restaurant. And McDonald's, Starbucks, and Subway are the 3 kind of highest income producing fast food chains. So a single Chick-fil-A store brings in more profit than a single, on average, McDonald's, Starbucks, and Subway combined. And so there's something funny about that as we enter his rhythms, we also enter his economy, where the work that we're doing is transformed by his rest. And that's a silly example, but I think it's an example that's telling and can touch into deeper parts of our lives, because things always seem to become more fruitful when they're submitted to God and his ways. And I think that that's something that we find and will find as we walk with God, and this to be true in our lives. And so this isn't something that's legalism, and I know particularly in this community you hear the word Sabbath and you might start shaking a little bit if you grew up in WCG, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about shaking out our toasters, we're not talking about anything like that. We're talking about not having to do something, but God inviting us to do. Not having to do it because it's the law, right? And we need to make that checklist, but being invited to do something because it's good for us, because God's inviting us into something good and something that's of him. He's sharing with us something of himself. And I once heard a pastor preaching on the Sabbath, and he was talking about how, while it's true that as followers of Christ, we don't hold to the same relationships with the law as the Jewish people did before Christ, we still understand that the law says something about who God is. And so with the 10 Commandments as an example, we don't just say, well, we're followers of Christ, and so we're not held to the law, so now we can murder and worship all these other gods and things like that, right? We sort of hold that these are still good things that God wants for us, but why don't we think that way about the Sabbath? Why is that the one commandment where we're like, well, we don't gotta follow the law anymore, so we don't have to rest, right? And so it's more than just checking the boxes, right? But it's about God inviting us into something of himself. And so God interrupts our rhythms to give us rest. And when we allow him to do so, it's this act of trust and submission that puts other things in our lives and other rhythms and other ways that the world would like us to move through the world. It puts those things in their proper place respective to God and his ways and the ways that he calls us to move in the world and the way that he exists with us. And especially in our context, I think that's a radical act of trust and submission because everything around us is calling us to do something different. It's calling us to work 100-hour weeks and never sleep and think that that's awesome and value our output above everything else. And so we know that this is something that God wants to share with us of himself, this rhythm of work and rest. And it's something that that is part of his own rhythms that he's inviting us into. And I want to talk more about this rest that God wants to share with us. Because we don't just mean physical rest. And when we read the scriptures, we see that it's not just a physical rest that God is inviting his people into, although that's a good thing. And in the example of the Israelites, I am sure, were physically exhausted. And so that rest and that ceasing from their work was important for physical rest. But in addition to physical exhaustion from their slavery and their adventure out of Egypt, the Israelites would have also been worn out emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. They would have been soul tired. Do you guys know, that's a term that I use, I don't know if you guys know what I mean, but it's this tiredness that's like deep within you, that's more than just, I didn't get enough sleep last night, right? And so the Israelites were soul tired, I'm sure. And in giving the Israelites a day of rest, God provides space not just for their physical rest and recovery, but for their emotional, mental, and spiritual rest and healing and recovery. God creates for them a time and space for deep soul rest. And in receiving this rest, we open ourselves to a deeper experience of him. And as we experience him, he nourishes and restores and gives rest to those parts of us that are soul tired. And so I think that's one of the other things that this command of Sabbath rest did for the Israelite people. We see in Matthew 11 that 28 to 30 that Jesus says to us, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Are you guys weary? Are you burdened? Because I know I am. I feel that soul tired that I'm sure the Israelites felt. I am weary, I am burdened. As a woman walking through this world, I'm weary. As a person living with a chronic condition, I'm burdened. As a person still healing from my mom's death, I am tired. As a witness to the continuing pain and injustice in this world, I ache, I'm weary, and I'm burdened.
Absolutely.
And Jesus promises rest. He says, "Come to me and I will give you rest." I love the Message translation of this. It says, "Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly."
I like that.
Church, this world is tiresome. It makes us weary. It makes us burdened. There are so many things that can make us so tired in this world. But Jesus promises to give us rest. And really, he is our rest. And when we break from our daily rhythms and enter into this rest of his, we really can and do find rest in him. As we allow him to break into our daily rhythms and offer his rest to us, we can be refreshed by him and find refuge in him. Find refuge in him and rest from these things that make us weary in our daily lives, as we allow him to enter into that and to give us his rhythms and his way of being and share that with us, we truly find rest in him. And so again, this isn't just about keeping the law, but are allowing ourselves this rest in him, allowing him to enter in and to give to us part of himself and to minister to us the truth of who he is and what that means. And actually after these words that Jesus said about come to me and I will give you rest, he gets in trouble with the Pharisees for 2 infractions of the Sabbath. And so I believe that the biblical authors are trying to paint a more complete picture about what sharing in God's rest is. Right? That it's about coming to him when we're weary and when we're burdened. It's about allowing him to give us rest. It's about taking his yoke and learning from him and trading our burdens for his that he wants to give us, which is light. And we can do this on good authority on Jesus' part. He's not just saying, come to me and I will give you rest, having never felt weary or burdened. Jesus walked a human life. He walked in human flesh in this world that makes us weary and burdened. And so as one who has felt wearisome and burdened by the pains of this world, we can trust him when he says that he'll give us rest, because he's known that and he's overcome it in his life and his death and his resurrection and ascension. And so we can trust him when he says, come to me and I'll give you rest, because he gets it and he understands what it is to be weary and to be burdened. And so I believe that as we allow ourselves to rest and enter into this deep relationship and intimacy with him and are submitted to his rhythms, that we'll find this kind of rest. This rest that is healing for our souls and our soul tiredness. This rest that is just penetrates so deep into our very being. And so my prayer and my challenge for us today is to allow God to hand us some of his rhythms, to actually make that time and space for God to offer us his rest and to share his rest with us. I don't want this to be well, Jesus is our rest, and so I can just go about my daily life and things will be okay because Jesus is our rest. Right? No, I want us to go into this with intentionality, to allow him to give us these rhythms. And whether it be a traditional weekly Sabbath, which I think is incredible, or something different, I challenge us that it be something intentional and something that happens prayerfully in our relationship with God, so that we have this intentional time and space where we're saying, yes, God, I'm surrendering my ways for your ways. I'm surrendering the rhythms of this world for your rhythms. And I'm surrendering my weariness for your rest. And I want us to think about the ways that we construct that time of rest. If Jesus is our rest, and he is the one that gives us rest, and he calls us to come to him when we're weary and we're burdened, then I think that calls for us to think and maybe transform our idea of some of the things we call rest. When we're resting, are we truly abiding in the one who is our rest and offers us rest for our weary souls? Are we doing things that nourish our walk with him? And are we doing things that form us more into his likeness, where we're sharing in this rhythm of life that he wants us to share with him? Are we sharing with him things that are life-giving? Or are we watching Netflix? Right? Because that's what the world offers as rest. And it's a cheap, bootleg, counterfeit version of rest. That just watching 8 hours of Netflix is gonna make you feel rested. Netflix cannot touch your weary and burdened soul. It can give you a break from the world, but it's not rest. And so my prayer also for us is that we come to God and allow Him to redefine and shape for us what rest means, what intentional rest means, that He, in that space, shows us that it's coming to Him, and not to say that these other things are bad, right? Other things that the world might call restful, like Netflix, or, I don't know, scrolling through Facebook on your phone and watching Vines or whatever. It's not that those things are bad. It's that they're not rest. They're not rest in this way. So when God wants to share with us His rhythms of rest, this is the kind of rest that He's talking about. The kind of rest that comes only from Him, that can touch our weary and burdened souls, that can touch the most tender parts of us that are tired and that maybe we've buried really, really deep. And so I pray for us that we'll let Him interrupt our rhythms. Let Him lead us into that place of deep rest, where we can come as weary and burdened people and find rest and restoration and an easy yoke and a light burden with Him. And my challenge is that we take practical steps to rest in Him, whether it's a Sabbath, whether it's a retreat, whether it's scheduling your quiet time to make sure that it happens. Take rest, take soul rest with Jesus. And let's, as a community of believers together, begin holding one another accountable to that, right? Because we care for one another, because we want one another to walk closely with God and to share in His rhythms and to experience the rest that He offers for weary and tired souls. And so I pray that as we move forward from today, each day, that we would let Jesus show us how to take this real rest that He offers to us. Let's pray. Jesus, we thank You that You get it, that You know what it means to be tired, that You know what it means to be weary and burdened. And we thank You that You offer us rest in our most tired of places. We thank You that You care so much about the rest of Your people. God, we thank You that You're the kind of God that says to a people who were enslaved and valued for nothing more than their labor, that were physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally tired, that You say to a people like that, take a rest. And God, we come before You confessing that we are those people, that we are those people that are valued just for our output, and we're in a world that makes us weary, and we are emotionally and physically and mentally and spiritually tired. So Jesus, we say, help us rest, teach us to rest, help us to come to You really and truly with all of our weariness and all of our tiredness, and find that rest that only You can give. Transform our entire conception of rest so that it would be centered on You, the only one that can bring us a true rest. And we pray that in submitting to that and Your rest and Your rhythms, that everything else would fall into its proper place and become even better for that. Become even better and more wonderful and life-giving and fruitful because it has been submitted to You. We pray for lives where our work becomes unlike work because we've shared so much in Your rest. I think of that G.K. Chesterton quote where he wrote that You delight to continue creating flower after flower after flower, saying, do it again. And we're the ones that have grown old and weary, God. We pray for Your kind of rest that can say, do it again, do it again, do it again, so that joy would be abundant and work would become fruitful and light and not heavy and burdensome, that we would be able to interact with this world in a different way, where even the things that do, and rightfully so, make us tired and burdened, that we would be able to lay them at Your feet and put even those things in their proper place in respect to You and Your kingdom. We thank You, Lord God, for rest, and we say, yes, teach us how. Yes. Teach us how, Lord God. We praise You and we thank You in Your holy name. Amen.
Amen.